I'm Tanya Hodgkiss of the Dog Bond Academy, and this is my podcast that I have aptly named the Pomcast. So I am a dog trainer and I talk about all things related to Pomeranian. So I am obviously a dog trainer that can train any dog, but I've decided to specialise in my favourite breed. I own 2 purebreds and I own a Pomchi, who is my absolute life. But here we are with the first ever requested Pomcast, and I hope you enjoy. So I'm going to keep it in theme with the time of year. So we're going to talk about Christmas and how this can be really stressful, or I know I've got global followers, so holiday season as you will call it. So for dogs, it's a busy time of year. It's a busy time of year for us, so obviously our behaviour starts to change because we're busy wrapping, decorations come out of nowhere, there's lights, there's a lot of sensory overload that happens there, and that can happen to people, so it only makes sense that dogs can feel exactly the same. And when things start to change, dogs start to question what's going on. So dogs are either optimistic and confident, or they're pessimistic and not so sure. So you might know which your dog is, but you need to be able to help them. So there can be challenges with both good and bad. So overstimulated dogs that get very excited about, say, a Christmas tree and the baubles on it can be equally as challenging as a dog that's finding it overwhelming and doesn't want to be involved in any of it. So why do dogs find Christmas or the holiday season stressful? So it's obvious to some maybe, but there's going to be more people in their lives. There's going to be a loss of routine. There's going to be people coming over. They might even be expected to go over to other people's houses. Then you're going to have large gatherings, lots of noise, lights, decorations. If you've got children, there's going to be a noticeable uptake in energy, and parents do find Christmas stressful. I've got children and it is stressful getting all of the food ready, getting the house decorated, spending all of that money, getting presents for people, and the obligation to see family members, because let's be honest, not everybody's sociable. I'm certainly not. I'm very introverted in nature, so going around people's houses to me is stressful, and dogs are exactly the same as people. So you get some people that are very extrovert and love these interactions, and then you get people like me that actually drains their social battery, and therefore I get anxiety around going to visit people, and dogs are the same. And we need to have that understanding, and its emotions will dictate the intensity of that reaction. So even a Christmas tree, some dogs may get excited, some dogs may be worried by it, some dogs just may be fairly indifferent, but they will notice it. And you need to manage those behaviours and keep them as calm and settled as possible. What we actually want is dogs to be as neutral as possible, so not to be overstimulated or fearful. And there's a good way of managing that. So that is creating a boundary for the dog and making it clear that whatever is going on isn't of any interest to them. They don't need to get involved. It's not really their business. So you can teach them to settle in a crate or on a settle mat or on a bed and create that boundary with a lot of positive reinforcement. Some dogs will find it hard to settle for a long period of time, so do allow them to get up and move around, but keep them engaged with you and not everything else that's going on. And then encourage them back to wherever it is that you want them to settle on this boundary with positive reinforcement. So something like a filled Kong, something you will have to test really the value of the reward. Some dogs you can use their daily food allowance, so their usual kibble, and they're so food motivated, that is enough. And then other dogs, you might have to mix it with a higher value reward to keep that engagement. So it will depend on the individual dog, as everything does. So the dogs with particularly poor impulse control, you may have to think about control and management. So if you're having people around, consider baby gate, whatever reason that may be, whether they're fearful or they're getting overstimulated, just because their reaction might not be appropriate to the situation. And if they're struggling with their impulse control, you haven't got enough time to teach that boundary, then you might want to just consider looking at baby gates or somewhere that they're out of the way. But do not shut them out of the way without no enrichment whatsoever, because then you're going to create probably frustration, and then they might start to bark or howl or whine or scratch or dig and do something else to get your attention. So make sure that however you manage it, it's done in a positive way, but you have to look at the dog individually. When you do get your dog to disengage and lay on the boundary bed, it's important that you consistently reward them for that, so they understand what it is they're being rewarded for, and making that positive association that because they have disengaged, that they are getting rewarded for it. And it does take some time, but it is very trainable. What you're essentially teaching them is that whatever that thing is that's in the distance, say the visitors or the tree or the presents or whatever it is that they really want to explore that is actually none of their business, they acknowledge that it's there, but they don't need to get involved in it. They are disengaged from it and they're getting their value from where they are on the boundary. So they are getting rewarded for being on that boundary. This is the same principle for any behavior. So what human beings tend to do is repeatedly tell dogs what they don't want them to do. So no, 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 don't do that. But what you actually need to do is ignore that and focus on what you do want them to do. People get it back to front. So rather than keep complaining to your dog, which is having no reward and no positive association whatsoever, you need to tell them what it is that you want and positively reward them for that. You're going to have a much better relationship and a lot clearer understanding of what it is that is expected of them. I meet a lot of dogs that really struggle with impulse control. So sometimes when you're teaching the boundary, you might need to keep a lead on them just to help them make the right choice all of the time to remain on the boundary. Now, obviously, those dogs that really do struggle with impulse control will struggle to remain on the boundary for a long period of time. And then that becomes pressure, which we don't want because pressure is negative. So allow them to get up and move around, but keep them engaged with you. So don't allow them to get off the boundary and then go and engage with whatever it is that you're trying to stop them engaging with. So be it visitors or the Christmas tree or the decorations or people cooking or dancing or kids playing, still make sure that they keep that focus with you and then are back on the boundary. Remember, as well as rewarding the behaviour, you're marking the behaviour. So either if you're clicker training, you'll click, or good, whatever the cue word is, so that they've also got that marker as well so they know. Preparation is obviously key, so you've got a couple of weeks before Christmas now to work on this boundary and then consider anything else in your individual dog's background. So if your dog is reactive and has anxieties around going on walks or certain triggers, then you're going to consider this in the days in the run up to Christmas, because you do not want the dog to have been trigger stacking and then it's not quite come back down, and then you get into Christmas Day and obviously they're much closer to the threshold than what you'd want them to be. So you want them to be as calm and settled and confident going into Christmas Day as possible if you know that it's going to be a big deal for them. Consider whether your dog needs to be present on Christmas Day. Does it need to be around family, friends, potentially strangers, all the hustle and bustle? Does your dog prefer to be in a quiet room in their bed out of the way? Because if they do, obviously give them that choice and let them do that. There are dogs obviously that suffer with separation issues and do need to be near their owner, and that's understandable. So obviously if that's the case, you need to use these strategies to help that dog on the day, because you're not going to solve separation anxiety in the next fortnight before we get to Christmas. So just consider, like I keep saying, each individual dog. Kongs, lick mats, chew toys, something like a yak, they're all going to be your friend for things like this. If you are putting them out of the way or you are teaching the boundary game, then things that are going to be really enticing and long lasting for them are going to really work in your favour.